So far, 2025 has been the year of the remaster. I've also been told that 2025 is Chinese, and I don't know what that was about, but I believe it. Suikoden, Lunar, Tomb Raider, Freedom Wars, Xenoblade X, Croc. I've made my opinion on remakes well known in the past, which is essentially no thanks. We've had enough, just port the original please. But a remaster is something I can get behind. Obviously the most important one is the one we're talking about today, Tales of Grace's F Remastered. A slap of paint, updated for modern consoles, and most of the DLC included. Rest in peace Hatsune Miku Sophie and Idolmaster Dealey Star's costumes. The sales these would have produced would have forced Namco Bandai to bring back Ai and Eri and give Ryo another game. Okay, this isn't really relevant, but it needed to be said. Graces was first released on the Wii in Japan, and then re-released as Graces F on the PS3, which is the version released in the West. Graces was the first Tales games I played, and I actually somehow own the Day 1 edition that came with the art book. It has mystic art cut-ins, concept art for characters and locations, as well as little chibi art that is used in some of the skits. It's actually a really good read. Excuse my poor video taking skills, it's kinda hard to turn these pages with just one hand. We'll be looking at the PS5 version today, which is identical to all other versions, so it doesn't really matter. Unless you really want to see the letter A on the screen a lot more, I suppose. This video will have spoilers throughout, so if you don't want anything spoiled, maybe go and play for yourself and come back later. Now without further ado, let's get into it. In my opinion, Tales of Graces is a game about love. Not just romantic, but all kinds of love. Love between friends, between family members, both good and bad, and the way these relationships make us act and feel about each other. Sophie spends a good chunk of the game wrestling with her inner conflict over having to fight her friend Richard, while also navigating her amnesia and figuring out who she is. I really like that Sophie actually overcomes this fear via a playable fight with Asbel, her good friend, after which she realizes if she can fight Asbel, then she can fight Richard without the urge to kill, which is an insane sentence. On the other side of the coin, you have Asbel and Sheria's developing relationship, going from childhood friends to bickering adults back into young adults in love. I think this spread of relationships is well shown even by looking at the party makeup. You've got Asbel and Hubert, two brothers split up by circumstance and awful parents. Sheria, their childhood friend. Sophie, the girl they found asleep in the flower meadow 7 years ago. Richard, the crown prince who met them literally twice but formed a lifelong bond with some of them. And then there's Captain Malik and Pascal, who don't have that years-long bond, but they manage to integrate into the party perfectly. Well, I guess Malik was Asbel's teacher for 7 years, but that's different. Personally, I think the relationship and banter between the party members is my favourite thing about this game. The overall plot is fine and all, but honestly predictable, and as much as the combat system is one of the best in the series, my favourite things are usually the narrative and characters. It's really nice to be able to see the characters change as they grow up, thanks to the childhood arc, and how the passage of time and various circumstances affected their personalities and how they feel about each other. The perfect example is Asbel and Sheria. When they were kids, Sheria very obviously had a big crush on Asbel. She's also very sick with a mystery illness which may or may not be asthma, and Asbel looks after her when she gets tired, although he does complain, but whether it's genuine or not is hard to tell. He is 10 after all. Hubert is also here. After Sophie disappears and Hubert gets sold to the Desert Nation even though he would have made a much better lord, Asbel runs away to the Knights Academy, which is exactly where he told everyone he was going, so I don't know why Ashton didn't just go and get him. Actually, it's because Ashton's a bad parent, I know exactly why. Anyway, Sheria is devastated by this. They have a big fight after Sheria misspeaks from fear of being left behind, and she doesn't see Asbel for 7 years because she thinks Asbel won't want to see her if she shows up, and even when they reunite after the time skip, she acts really cold and distant towards him for a long time, until she finally confesses he broke her heart when he left, and from then on they act better with each other.
Well, that's your fault. In fact, all this is your fault. 7 years ago, you walked out of my life. You never came back. I didn't know if I'd ever see you again. I missed you. Damn it. I missed you so much. I wanted to come see you, but I was worried you wouldn't want me there. So I didn't.
And her unrequited love, which is actually mutual, starts to make itself feel known again. I absolutely love the progression of relationships like this. Other characters do it too, like Hubert with Pascal and Malik, Hubert with his brother, and Sophie with everyone, really, including herself. This is also the funniest group of characters I've come across in any game in a long time. The skits can range between serious discussions of the current events in the plot, to the inevitability of death, to fruits shaped like Shuria's butt. My personal favourites include the truth salt and oil ray.
Odd. Huh? What? No, I'm not. I'm fine. Let's talk about Captain Malik instead. Are you okay? You need to watch your blood pressure.
Hey.
Literally everything except the rocket gong.
Everyone thinks we should leave through the butt. Let's search for the butt, Sharia. It's the only way.
Sophie? You are making things much worse.
Such a child.
Pascal being too hot to speak throughout Strata.
Yes, I see.
Is she alright?
She says it's so hot she doesn't feel like talking.
She could at least finish what she was saying.
National Crablet Day.
Crablets.
What?
I like crablets a lot.
You mean crab omelets?
Yes, crablets, I love them.
Is that right? Well, I guess my favorite food is...
Crablets.
No, it's not crablets.
It should be. The crablet is the finest food in the world. In fact, I think they should make National Crablet Day.
She's like a whole different person.
And whatever this was.
If I mess around with it, I'm sure something will happen.
Something meaning what? Something good? Oh, it should be fine. You seem oddly calm about this. I'm resigned to the fact that Pascal's messing around will bring us to some sort of painful finish.
Hubert, you want Pascal's messing around to bring you to a painful finish?
What? I didn't say that.
Hey, maybe she's into that sort of thing. Who am I to judge, right?
I did not say that.
The after battle quotes are greatly improved in this entry as well. There's a lot more camera movement and physicality. The party really has jokes. Here are some of my favourites.
Let's do it. We are... Hey! We are...
Pascal!
Are you alright, Sharia? Can you stand?
If only Asbel could be this kind.
I heard you like crab omelets, Sophie.
Yes, crablets.
I bet Richard gets to eat special royal crablets.
Royal crablets?
I'm afraid there's no such thing.
Royal crablets.
You wait, Sophie. Let's all calm down.
I laughed out loud at these several times. They really help the party seem like a group of friends that are comfortable joking with each other. And with the skits on top of this, I genuinely think this might be the funniest game in the series. Although I haven't played Tales of Fandom Volume 2, it could be hilarious for all I know. It is really nice to have skits again. This is really showing me how much I missed them during Eternia. Another important theme is death. The whole reason that Richard absorbed Lambda to begin with is because he didn't want to die. And a lot of Sophie's trauma towards the end of the main arc is either being sick and dying, or waking and realising she was made to die in battle. There are some great scenes after this when the party, but mainly Asbel, convince her not to throw her life away. But my favourite thing is how this is turned on its head in the Lineage and Legacies extra story. At this point, Sophie has learned of her humanoid origins and has realised that everyone around her will grow old and die, except for her, resulting in her desire to become human, wishing she had been born into Asbel's family rather than being an outsider destined to live forever. I really like both sides of the situations being looked at here. The existential dread of accepting your impending death, only to be suddenly made aware that it will never actually come for you, but instead just those you love, who will all be taken away and there's nothing you can do. With regards to the rest of the plot, I know earlier I said it was fine, and I think a large part of that has to do with I worked out a big plot twist relatively early. And by early, I mean straight away. The main plot threads really are just who or what Sophie is, and why Richard is suddenly the most evil man on the planet. Surely it can't be anything to do with the giant evil monster that almost killed the kids 7 years ago. The real meat of the game is the journey throughout the various locales anyway, and there's a great spread of areas. There are 3 major countries in Affinia. Windor is the lush green area full of life, home to the majority of the party and the vast city of Verona, powered by the wind Elith of Cloandi, the Vulcanus Creus. What's a Vulcanus Creus? Well, it's a crystallized form of energy, with Creus shards being small deposits of energy, and the Vulcanus is a large reservoir of energy that may or may not be a major plot point later. But not really the wind one, it does all its plot development off screen, I'm afraid. Windor is mostly just green fields and small towns like Lant, but there is one forest that you go to once, and there's nothing really of note there, unfortunately. The most significant area has to be Lant Hill, a very dangerous cliffside that children clearly should not be allowed to go near, but it does have flowers blooming on it all year round. This is also where the adventure begins, and where the group finds Sophie twice over years. Also, it's very easy to survive a fall off these cliffs apparently. Windor is also the only country with a monarchy, and therefore is the one where the leader is most at danger, with Richard himself being poisoned at least twice. And maybe we should get rid of the monarchy actually, the other countries seem to be faring well enough without one. Speaking of, the next area is Strata. Strata is all desert. As much as the in-between areas here are incredibly samey, I really enjoy the dungeons and the towns here. This is where the fabled Rockagong lives and Gagong's people.
It's called a rockagong. It probably takes rocks and Gagong's people with them. Gagong!
What is wrong with you people?
This is also where most of my favourite skits are, and I think it's hilarious how nobody but Sheria really seems to mind that they're on the verge of being digested. Every other town doesn't really have that much to offer by itself. They're all really pretty, I guess, but Sable Izole has my absolute favourite thing. Magic Carta. Magic Carta, my beloved. This is a card game similar to the real-life game Uta Garuta, which has a reader reciting a poem from a set of 100, known as the Ogra Hyakunin Ishu, with players aiming to select a card which has the second half of the poem from a large selection. The version here is changed to be various characters from previous entries, with their quotes being read. I would say this might be a little easier if you've actually played the game's reference, but honestly some of the quotes here aren't the most obvious. Like Cress mentions Daos, so that's fine, but Caius's quote is just, let's see. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? If you inspect the cards in the menu, you can see the quote, so that's what you're actually supposed to do, but why would I do what I'm expected to do? It's the sort of game that I could sit and play for hours, and it actually has accessory and title rewards, although the CPU cheats. Like, I'm not even being salty, it literally teleports across the screen before you could even process what line's being said. Eventually you will win, but it took me a few goes, which honestly I'm not complaining. In the original, you had to collect these cards throughout the game, but the remaster gives you the option to obtain them all early, which really fleshes the game out. Good option in my opinion. Anyway, yeah, Uliberte is cool too, I guess. Hubert's family are mean, cool immortal snowman, boo, we hate the Oswells. The important part is Pascal has some funny skits on the way to the Vulcanis when she gets too hot to speak. God, I love her so much.
Why do you think the Amarcians put a Valkanus in the middle of the desert like this?
Pascal says you actually have it backwards. She says the Vulcanus Creus likely turned this place into a desert.
Why are you speaking for her, Sheria?
She says it's a pain to talk in this heat.
The final country is Fendel, and I honestly think this is my favourite. I much prefer the music here, the port and battle themes are my favourite. And while the snowy environment is as samey as the previously mentioned ones, I think the towns are much more interesting. You've got the rundown village with people literally scrambling for scraps of Creus on the ground, an industrial city full of pipes and an increased military presence, and then the mythical Amarcian enclave with floating structures and advanced technology like the chocolate fountain, which sounds like a sticky nightmare, honestly. This is also the location of Malik's Malik's homosexual situationship, so this area was always going to get 10,000 points from me. There's also another area way later into the game, Vodra, the giant planet just off of Affinia that nobody has apparently noticed before. This is a world devastated by the loss of all of its Elith, so it's all barren canyons and remains of civilization. Even the only city, Telos Estue, has no actual life apart from some barely working humanoid robots, and also Emerald, the most evil woman alive. Every area has a sort of depressing atmosphere, and even the citadel you visit has this sort of oppressive air, with nothing remaining except humanoid child soldiers and some ore brought straight from Durrus Carlon. It's all very upsetting to think about, and honestly my favourite part is an optional subscene when Sophie sees a human child get mauled by a monster right in front of her, and she barely even cares. I know she didn't have a personality at this stage, but still, brutal. Speaking of subscenes, there are so many missable scenes and skits throughout. There are lots of skits that you have to backtrack to see, and to be perfectly honest, I got very few of these, as I was just playing through the game as I wanted. I did see some optional scenes though, like when Hubert disowned his mother for selling him to another country to be raised by evil people, which, yeah, fair, he's so right for that. Thankfully nothing major is missable, although I did miss a scene with Captain Malik in the childhood arc, so I will regret that for every day until I die. The dungeon areas are a little bit better than previous entries. A lot of them are still just long corridors, like the Fendel Research Lab and Barona Castle. Jesus, I hated Barona Castle actually. At least with the remaster they added destination markers that make traversing these identical corridors a bit easier, which also helps in Wallbridge Fortress, which was absolutely horrific in the original, with switches with no obvious function that can only be switched in a specific order. The reason I prefer them a little more in this game is the larger variety in locales, like you've got the ancient Amarcian ruins at Wallbridge, a place that apparently a lot of people don't necessarily like, but I actually enjoyed the puzzles here. I think the sound of the platforms hitting each other was satisfying. There's the glacier outside Zafert, the previously mentioned Rockagong's stomach, the Fendel Tower's maintenance shafts, and the seaside cavern outside of Lawn, to name a few. But honestly, I do think there are more stinkers than winners, honestly. A lot of the dungeons in the early game don't even have gimmicks to make you use your brain a little, and even the ones that do are the easiest things on earth. Like there are block pushing parts in the Fendel Research Lab, but calling them puzzles might be exaggerating a little bit. The Snowshroud Ruins make you direct Elith's power to power doors and move forward, but there's only ever one option to choose, and the humanoid research facility is just backtracking for the sake of backtracking. Various doors throughout need charged batteries to open, and these can only be found at the beginning of the entire dungeon. That one was particularly bad, honestly. What I will say is I think the final dungeons of both the main game and Lineage and Legacies are great, if not very long. They both have some interesting gimmicks, but I really like the various different sceneries in both. If I had to pick, I would say I prefer the Guardia Shaft from the main game. And yes, that's mostly down to that stupid section in Fodra's core, where the strange Elith concentration makes the party constantly have a specific status ailment depending on the floor. For example, on one floor you'll constantly be paralysed, on another you'll always be poisoned, and this was really annoying. Yeah, I know you can stop it by defeating a certain monster, but like, it was still really annoying. It messed with Shuria's AI a lot for some reason. Also, screw that little queen fight. I know I did it with the paralysis effect still on, I know, but it was still really annoying. But really, the gameplay most people are looking for here is the battle system. Many praise this game for having the best combat in the series, and while I haven't played all of them, I'm inclined to agree with this. It's hard to compare it with the 2D entries, but even still, those I have played can be clunky, and from what I remember of Xillia, the closest entry to Graces I've played, it wasn't as responsive as Graces is. So yeah, I would say it is the best. Graces uses a chain capacity system very similar to that used in Destiny Director's Cut. Each art a character uses has a specific CC cost, with the character's minimum and maximum CC values being determined by both their equipped weapons and specific skills they can learn. The main gimmick is that a character's arts are split into two types: Assault Arts or A Arts and Burst Arts or B Arts. A Arts are usually physical based attacks and activated in sequence of rising CC cost, starting with 1 cost, then 2, then 3, then 4, and the sequence is affected by moving the left stick. Burst Arts are more magical, and depending on the character these are different. Like Asbel will use special sword moves, while Shuria will either use healing and buffing arts, or absolutely devastating magical attacks. The amount of movement you have access to is great as well. Sidestepping is quick and easy, and successfully dodging grants you additional CC, allowing for longer combos and more attacks. It's honestly a lot of fun, really fast paced, and it's easy enough to know what's going on. Although honestly there were a few times I didn't notice a party member had died, although that might just have been me getting into it a little bit too much. The combat is situational as well, since every art has specific attributes, like humanoid or amorphous, and each enemy has several specific weaknesses, with the enemy being stunned if you hit all of them in a certain amount of time, meaning there's some choice and strategy, so you shouldn't just use the same arts every single battle. In my opinion, this is great and a lot of fun, although it did result in a lot of battles starting out with me just staring at the enemy's weaknesses, then looking over my arts to figure out the best combo. Thankfully no creature has any absorptions, so you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, it's definitely my favourite of the combat systems, and each character is really unique in how they control an attack, so there's a lot of variety in this too, but we'll get to each of those later. Fun fact, they're called A arts and B arts, because Grace is originally released on the Wii, and the A arts were on the A button, and the B arts were on, well yeah, you get the picture. I thought it was cool. Now is a pretty good time to talk about each party member, and if you're still here trying to dodge spoilers, I'm going to talk about the main game and the Lineage and Legacy story, so you have officially been warned. Our first party member is Asbel Land, the eldest child of the evil Ashton and Kerry, and the heir to the Lordship of Land, an area which may or may not be an independent nation but still under the rule of Windor. When we meet him, he's 11 and he is a huge troublemaker. The literal first thing you see him do is drag his well-behaved brother up to Laund Hill, somewhere he has been explicitly banned from going. Ever. We will be back here many times. He's also really stubborn about gaining strength and protecting the people he loves, which isn't inherently a bad thing. Having a strong sense of justice is good, but he is 11, so it's not the most developed sense. This is most obvious when he challenges Sophie to a race to see who protects who, and then is confused when he loses. And then in the Barona Catacombs, when fighting Lambda, Sophie stands in front of Asbel to protect him, and he literally pushes in front of her before getting thrown across the room. This leads to his leaving Laund to join the Knights Academy after everything, which does hone his senses a little, but honestly it's still a bit much after all. Even after this, he's still very naive in my opinion, like when he acts like nothing happened with Sharia just after the time skip, when she's giving him the most attitude that anyone has ever given anyone ever. And every time Richard does something obviously completely evil and he just ignores it. Like, Asbel, please use those 2 brain cells that you have. He's also really overbearing and honestly too protective of Sophie, which, like, yeah, you saw her get killed 7 years ago, I get it. But in the seaside cavern, when he repeatedly says the girl should head back if it gets too much. Or when he snaps at Pascal when she's offering potential solutions to Sophie's sickness later in the game. He could really do with learning to lean on other people every once in a while. And honestly, I don't think that's a lesson he ever really learns. He just sort of does his own thing. Like when he absorbs Lambda after pulling it out of Richard, which, yes, it did work out, but it was a stupid decision by all metrics. And following that, when he said he was going to let Lambda take over his body in Lineage and Legacies. And Sharia literally cries in front of him and he doesn't waver in the slightest. Which again, yes, it did work out. But like, he could have been a little bit more sympathetic to Sharia's feelings. He does have his good moments though, like when he's excommunicated from Laund by his brother. He falls in the rain and laments he actually doesn't have the power he thought he had to protect everyone, which he then gains to protect Sophie when she's fighting Richard for the first time. There's also him and Sharia's relationship, including the previously mentioned scene after Sharia's murder attempt, and while I much prefer Sharia's actions there, I still think it's really cute. I'm actually not Asbel's biggest fan, honestly. Like, I don't hate him, he's fine. I just think I prefer literally everyone else to him. He does have his moments in the skits though.
Hey, Asbel!
Hmm?
Listen, you've been acting all distant lately. Did something happen?
Well, Pascal,
Yeah?
the truth is, it's surprise!
Huh? What?
Happy birthday!
Pascal? Oh my gosh! What? You guys are the best! Something like that?
Something like what?
In battle, Asbel uses a sword, and is the character I use for the majority of the playthrough. However, I did take some time to use each of the other characters though, and rotated the party around a bit throughout, so I'll actually be able to speak on their abilities proper this time. Anyway, Asbel. In his A arts, Asbel attacks with his sword sheathed, and unsheathes it when you use a B art. The act of unsheathing gives Asbel a brief period of power armor, and then when it's sheathed again, he regains a little HP depending on how many B arts he used. It's a vaguely useful technique, but honestly I only used it a few times, and I don't think it ever really made too much difference to my survival, considering when you die it's usually because the enemies mince you into a corner, which is actually really easy to do. I managed to do it to several bosses, including the final phase of the final boss. Overall, Asbel feels really good to control, and a great variety of arts he has makes every encounter feel different, considering you might be using a completely different set of arts depending on the enemy's weaknesses. Oh, there's also Axel mode, a new mode added in the F version. When a character's gauge fills up, you can unleash a special move, which in Asbel's case, this has a little purple cloud surround him that can stagger enemies and cause damage. It's not really the most useful, and I really only used it to use his new Mystic art, but it's pretty cool I guess, but honestly, I prefer the other characters' ones. Next up is Sophie. I know Hubert was there first technically, but we'll come to him later. Sophie spends the vast majority of the game not knowing where she came from, who she is, or how to even act like a human being. In the childhood arc, we see her not even have the basic survival instincts of knowing not to walk off of a cliff, but she very quickly develops a love and fondness for the group, even going so far as to sacrifice herself to save them later, something she picked up from Asbel's need to be strong and protect her. Even her name is given by Asbel, after the Soferia flower she was found in, and yeah, to be fair, they are very pretty flowers. I would also grow a flower bed almost exclusively of them. After the time skip, she's revived via the light she imbued in Asbel and Sheria, and regains her memories of that time when she meets Hubert again. Even in this time of amnesia, she still manages to be sassy and funny in the skits, including one directly after the trio leaves Lawn Hill for the first time, although obviously the skits are an exaggeration of the party's personalities. Sophie goes through a lot of turmoil throughout the game, starting with her hesitating to fight Richard as he's a friend, which she manages to get over after sparring with Asbel, and she says she didn't feel the desire to destroy Asbel in the fight, which is crazy. Then there's the dread she feels when she thinks there's something important she's forgotten to do, which we soon find out is sacrifice herself to destroy Lambda, as she's actually a humanoid from Fodra, not even being human. Then it's on to her accepting her own impending death, not being allowed to carry out her duty. Then finally in Lineage and Legacy, she's worried about remaining behind while everyone around her grows old and dies, as previously discussed. Let's give the girl a break, maybe? After all this, at least she gets adopted by Asbel, and everyone else gets a family role, and Sheria becomes the mother, and I don't really know if she agreed to pick up a legal dependent. I guess Sheria has been mothering Sophie a lot throughout the game, and I really like the relationship Sophie has with each party member. The main plot beats show off her feelings towards Asbel and Richard pretty well as Sheria looking after her between important scenes. She's shown to mimic Pascal a lot throughout, copying some of her mannerisms and movements, and Malik seems to teach her a lot of things that are either false or made up, and this is shown by both skits and also post-battle dialogue. Even Sophie's B arts show her relationship with her friends, as a lot of them are related to the others, taking inspiration from their weapons. Her other B arts are healing focused, on a single target as opposed to Sheria's AoE healing, and her A arts are all close combat punches and kicks, and honestly I was really impressed by the animations of a lot of these. They're really punchy, for lack of a better word. Movement is quick and easy, and honestly really fun. Her Axel mode allows you to teleport directly behind the enemy from any distance, increases her CC regeneration rate, and also makes her front step ability cause damage, which is insane and a lot more useful sounding than the pink cloud of doom. Okay, I'm going by order of obtaining party members post time skip now, so next up is Sheria Barnes. As previously mentioned, Sheria used to be really sick with asthma or like the consumption or something when she was younger, but after 7 years she got over it and she can fight now. It's heavily implied, but I don't think it's outright stated that it was Sophie's light that cured her, but like obviously it was Sophie, I don't think we need the game to confirm that. We've already mentioned her being cold to Asbel after they meet again, but something I think really funny about that is halfway at the launch they get attacked, and after fending off the enemy alone, I may add, Asbel says something about protecting Sheria, to which she replies she can fight too, which makes her not participating in battle up until then really funny. She was just so annoyed at him that she let him do all the work. She's very caring after she makes up with Asbel though, after their big fight, which was entirely Asbel's fault, but also Raymond, I guess. We hate Raymond. All my homies hate Raymond. I also absolutely adore the parallels between Asbel leaving Sheria behind on bad terms at the end of the childhood arc, and Sheria leaving to fulfill her dreams at the end of Lineage and Legacies, this time on good terms with Asbel, waiting for her to come back. Really helps tie the whole game together for me. She's usually the voice of reason, being the first one to really question why Richard is acting so weird all of a sudden in Wallbridge, even though she'd only seen him for about 3 seconds at that stage, and being the only one to even be vaguely upset by the rocket gong. Her personality in skits and after battle scenes is great too. Her unspoken but obvious love for Asbel is a punchline a lot, but I really like this one where she says real women eat chicken for some reason. I don't know, I just think it's the right brand of weird for me. Now, Sheria in battle is a whole different beast, and beast is absolutely the right word because she is busted. Her ARs use throwing knives to attack but still keep a bit of distance, and she has a load of area of effect healing spells, as well as evasion and accuracy boosting spells, but the real killer are her offensive spells. Divine Saber, Seraphic Bolt, even Indignation as a normal art are insane. She can deal a lot of damage while not having the longest spell charge times, easily breaking Nova shields. Her only real disadvantage is that if she gets targeted, then she's gone. Like, she can get ground into paste within seconds, unfortunately. This is all irrelevant due to the fact that Sheria is literally Dio Brando. Her Axel mode lets her freeze time, and her third mystic art, Punishing Blossom, literally has her freeze some daggers in the air before unleashing them on the enemy, which is literally what Dio does at the end of Stardust Crusaders, and which is probably my favourite mystic art in the entire game. Okay, let's go to who I would say is absolutely my favourite character, Pascal. She is hilarious, but she's also a very mysterious character in the beginning, knowing a lot about the mysterious ruins and able to use ancient technology. She knows a lot about things she shouldn't, and this is because she is an Amarcian, an ancient race of people originally from Fodra who are really proficient with technology. But Pascal prefers to use her vast intellect to make things like chocolate fountains or giant robot replicas of Asbel. Her brain works in mysterious ways that no one else could possibly understand, such as when she casually reveals her Amarcian status when pressed and says she didn't reveal it earlier because nobody asked. And this is more obvious during almost every single skit she's in, like in the Rokugan when she doesn't seem to be bothered by Sheria having a breakdown, but in an oblivious sort of way.
Hey, so what happens if we toot the Rockagong's flute from inside it? Pascal! Wow, this flute is pretty intense. Ugh, you just don't listen to other people, do you? What you think happened to the guy who owned this flute? He must be dead, yeah?
Hey, stop it!
I wonder if his corpse is still kicking around in here.
Seriously, stop!
Look at that wall! It's like a human face! His lips are moving. It seems like he's trying to say something. Like... someone's name?
Sheria?
Oh, wowzers! Her voice hit the same frequency as the flute! Anyway, what's up, Sophie?
I just wanted to tell Sheria that I'm hungry.
She's very touchy with Sophie though, which is kind of weird actually, but her zany personality makes up for that in other places. She also refuses to bathe ever if she can help it, which is one of many sources of contention between her and Sheria, which is mostly for comic relief, but it also infuriates her sister Fourier, and the two share a really great scene when Fourier feels inferior to Pascal since she's been spending months to years on research that Pascal threw away after realizing it was flawed at a basic level simply by thinking about it, which honestly, for someone who has severe imposter syndrome, this part hit hard. I really like the relationship between these two. Pascal does really appreciate her sister as well, as shown when she cries outside the dungeon. Unfortunately, she doesn't have as deep a bond as the rest of the party due to not being present during the events of 7 years prior, something she shares with Captain Malik. This also has the distinct disadvantage of not possessing the light Sophie shared with the others, meaning Pascal and Malik cannot use Nova attacks, but thankfully this is rectified later once she has access to the Darius Karlan ore. In battle, Pascal is a mage, but her attacks are area based rather than target based. In an interesting change, her A arts are mostly long range, shooting projectiles from her shot staff, while a lot of her B arts are glyph arts that are close range, spreading out from Pascal herself. She also acts as a summoner of the group, with certain sub-events allowing her access to elemental summons, which give Pascal very useful B arts and also her mystic arts. She's an incredibly useful party member, and she's pretty fun to control. Plus her battle lines are always really great. Having someone with her personality in the party is always a good time, even if just to see her after battle skits. Next up is the literal love of my life, Captain Malik Caesar. Malik was Asbel's instructor at the Knights Academy, but they became enemies briefly after Cedric's failed poisoning of Richard and the following conflict. He joins the party after the matter is settled, and Richard decides to actually not execute the prisoners, which is so generous of him. Richard is so kind. As the oldest member of the party, Malik does have a lot of wisdom to share, keeping the party grounded in some stressful situations. Although conversely, he really enjoys to mess with the party, including teaching Sophie facts that are just incorrect. But it's funny, so it's okay. Malik also has a mysterious past. He makes several references to this throughout, like when asked why he went into teaching rather than just knightly duties. Turns out he's actually from Fendel, and was part of an attempted revolution in the past, alongside his very good friend, the Chancellor's daughter, and his life partner, his homosexual situationship, Kurt. This adds a lot of tension to the trip of Fendel Tower to Kurt's office, the sexual tension between them during their argument, and the eventual melancholy after Kurt sacrifices himself to save Fendel after a situation which was almost entirely the fault of the Chancellor. I don't know, maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but Malik does have a lot of drama. At least he's able to have fun now, although he does have a lot of lines that relate to the fact that he's lived for a long time, and he's ready to leave the world to the next generation, which is crazy. Also, he's single, which is interesting information. To me, Malik in battle is a typical Tales mage. He's got a lot of the typical B arts you'd expect to see, and his spells are target based. The interesting part is his A arts, which involve him throwing his blade around towards the enemy, and follow-up arts will affect where the blade is when you hit the button, although this leaves Malik stuck in place and vulnerable, meaning there's a strategy to when and where is best to attack. I mean, anytime I used him, I stuck mainly to the B arts since I thought they were a lot better, but I also died a lot, so maybe take that with a pinch of salt. His Axel mode involves him kicking the enemy at high speeds, which is really cool and makes me think things. I may have thought slightly too much about this man over the years. Okay, the final permanent party member, Hubert Oswell. As a child, Hubert was really timid, always following behind his big brother, with little to no confidence in himself. At a certain stage after Richard's visit to Lont, Ashton, the evil, disgusting man, brings Hubert to Verona in order to negotiate the highest selling price for the son he did not want, even though Hubert would have objectively been a better choice for the lordship, since clearly Asbel did not want it. This leads to an interesting scene where the other kids turn up with Richard in tow, telling Hubert they're pretending Richard is their brother, which causes Hubert to think they also want to replace him, since he's just found out he's being sold for literally nothing. After the time skip, he's become a lot more confident, some might say arrogant, and has completely forsaken his previous family, which I would say is fair in case of his parents, but not really as much for Asbel, as he wanted absolutely no part in this, but I guess he never really held Hubert's opinion in much regard and just pulled him along, but also he was like 11 years old, so maybe he should get a bit of grace. Eventually we get to meet some of his family members, Raymond, who tried to kill Sharia for blackmail purposes, and Garrett Oswell, who tried to siphon an insane amount of praise from Lont and use Hubert as a sacrificial pawn to do so, and it's made very clear Hubert had to grow up very quickly in order to survive. Once he rejoins the party, he's very distrusting of Malik and Pascal since he knows literally nothing about them, which comes to a head in Zavhert when he successfully pins Malik as a Fendalian and manages to figure out Pascal's identity, but isn't as satisfied with how the questioning goes. Thankfully, the two aren't dissuaded by Hubert's distrust and manage to get him on their sides quite soon afterwards actually, after his arrogance over the local monsters leads to a near-death experience. In the skits, Hubert is shown to be quite a prude actually, making comments about the length of Sherry's skirt of all things, but most importantly, he's a huge nerd. Specifically a big fan of the Sunscreen Rangers, an obvious reference to Super Sentai and Tokusatsu as a whole, which I can absolutely relate to. In battle, Hubert makes use of his unique weapon, also inspired by the Sunscreen Rangers, which is a dual blade that can be split in two to use as guns. His A arts are mostly dual blade based, while the B arts are gun based, with a few healing spells thrown in. Although the most important art is his first mystic art, Instant Balls.
Prepare yourself! Dance like the damned! Instant balls!
His Axel mode makes a rain of arrows, but honestly I don't think it was particularly useful. He's also got some insane end of battle quotes to make up for it.
Look once with awe upon the dual blade warrior, then never look again.
He was my least used party member, and honestly he was fun enough to use, but at the stage of the game he joins, I find it quite hard to put him into the party, which to be fair isn't his fault, but that's just why he got left behind unfortunately. Okay, there's actually one more. Richard joins your party temporarily during the main arc before he goes off the rails, and then permanently during the Lineage and Legacy section. In the childhood arc you get to see his actual personality on full display, caring for the people and distrusting of those around him, thinking they'll simply use him for profit, which, to be fair to him, is exactly what we see happen with most of his political allies and family. In the main arc, he's already been possessed by Lambda, which causes Sophie to enrage him whenever she comes close, and he wavers between his normal self and a completely evil caricature at times, which Asbel sweeps under the rug, including the time he completely eviscerated a man in Wallbridge. After he completely lies to Asbel about Lant and says he's going to take very good care of him, which is insane by the way, he becomes a lot more outwardly evil, only showing little bits of himself during scenes when it's just him and Lambda. Or just him and himself? It doesn't matter, the point is, he and Lambda actually get on really well. It's not a parasitic relationship, since after Emerald drags Lambda out of him and literally explodes, Richard welcomes Lambda back in. Whether or not that's a good idea it's bad. It's a very bad decision. He's going to destroy the world. It's bad. In the next arc, Richard gets a costume change to show he's no longer evil, which is explained in-game that Lambda chose his previous outfit, which honestly I think I did prefer. Here he's very keen to repent for his previous sins, working with the other countries to find peace and all that, while constantly teasing Hubert and Asbel about their respective love interests. Which is crazy work when you don't have a queen to carry on the royal lineage, sire. Battle-wise, I'll be honest, I did use him for a bit when the game forces you to, but not much beyond that. His A arts are all sword based, while his B arts are all spells, with his Axel mode halving cast time and CC cost, which I would imagine would be really useful if you actually bothered to use him. Maybe next time I'll actually get a good handle on all of the characters. Feel free to use that line against me and hold me accountable by the way. Now is a good time to talk about Lambda, since he's inside Richard for most of the game. Lambda is a sort of energy-based being, I think. He was formed in the core of Fodra and was subject to horrific experiments by Emerald, the evil villain, although Professor Cornell liked him and gave him a human body. But then the Fodrans decided they didn't like Lambda anymore because of their own actions, so they tried to blow him up, but he escaped anyway. But then Protos Haste turned up and yeah, he wants to destroy the world because of how badly he was treated, and that's why him and Richard get along so well, since Richard was dodging poisoning attempts every other day. Eventually, once Asbel absorbs Lambda, he calms down a bit, only after threatening to take over his mind and destroy the world anyway, mind you. He does speak to Asbel throughout the Lineage and Legacies arc though, telling him about his stupid theories that won't work and how to blow up his psyche within the Fodran Elith, but it's all from a place of good intentions. There's a great parallel here with how the Little Queens speak to Sophie in much the same way, although they are tempting her away from the humans, while Lambda is actively trying to help the humans, and the opposite of what he was doing in the main arc, showing that Asbel has actually managed to change his mind in the last 6 months, and eventually he moves on to Fodra's heart in order to do for her what Asbel did for him. I actually really like Lambda as a villain. He's not the pure evil character you would expect from his designs, although yes, he does have those very evil moments with Richard, but he has his reasons for that, even if that does not justify anything. If you did in fact want a pure evil character, Emerald is right there. Right, now that that's out of the way, let's get to the real important part. The music. Obviously the first thing to mention is the opening. God, I am obsessed with this song. It's one of the 2 Teals that have bespoke English versions of the song, along with Vesperia. Honestly, I struggle to decide which I like better. I think it's one or the other on any given day. I will say it's one of my favourite openings in the entire series, although that could be recency bias as well as nostalgia. The visuals also give a great insight into each character's personalities, but I would love to know why Asbel was so sad when Captain Malik was hitting that pose in the background. One thing I really appreciate about the soundtrack is that each country has its own version of the battle and port themes, and honestly I would have to say that Fendel's are my favourite in both cases. I just really like the subdued vibe of the port theme, and the other battle themes are great, I just think Fendel's edges them out a little bit. The rest of the soundtrack does a good job of getting the vibe of each area across, but honestly it's pretty forgettable. Like, don't get me wrong, it's all perfectly serviceable, but there's nothing that really stands out. Usually in my notes I would write down when I heard a banger I liked, but I did that literally once this playthrough, and it was Emerald's boss battle theme, and I heard that one a lot because she beat my ass several times. I will say I'm not a fan of a couple of the early boss themes as well. I think they're a little bit too much, slightly overstimulating for me. Okay, now that I've mentioned all of my main points, here are a few random things I wanted to talk about but didn't really know where else to put them. There are a couple of quests throughout the game to pick up items throughout the world, like various flower seeds you can grow in Sharia's gardens, or gathering plushies for a little ghost girl. I did not complete any of these. There's also another minigame on top of Magic Carta that I really liked, which is Shock Cube in the Amarcian Enclave. Sliding block puzzles are great, and I got every single one in one attempt. Cool beans. There's no hot springs scene in this game, thank God, but there is a beach resort in Strata, where Malik gets Sharia to flirt with random men for some reason. Sophie also says she's a sexy cat. Oops, I meant kitty cat. There's an entire optional dungeon after you complete everything else, the Zone Cage, which has 10 floors of incredibly strong enemies and has 2 of the optional cameo battles, Riala from Destiny 2 and Kohaku from Hearts, known as Amber here. The other cameo is vague from Rebirth, and as of yet only Hearts has been localized, so Western players would have had absolutely no idea who any of these people were on original release. I also did not do the Zone Cage, as grinding to level 200 was not something I particularly wanted to do. Maybe someday. I haven't mentioned any of the enemies being particularly ugly or anything like that, since I don't think any of these guys look as bad in 3D as they did in 2D. I guess there's the 3D eyeball Nova monsters, but they have nothing on the guys from Eternia. There are monsters in the final dungeon of the main arc to give out the character's ultimate weapons, and they're named after previous entries. However, in the future arc there are more weapons named after the series, and since a lot of the names were already taken, they had to go with some of the more obscure entries, like Pascal's weapon is named after Tales of Fandom, and Asbel's is a Radiant Mythology reference. I think that's kind of cool actually. Let's shine a light on the spin-offs. Where are Sophie's Natty Katie Dungeon X gauntlets? There are many different costumes and attachments for each character, some of them being original designs, some swimsuits, and a lot being legacy costumes from other entries. My favourite is Malik's detective outfit. Do not judge me, please send all criticism to your local politicians. And finally, I just want to mention this line the little queen says before her fight, since I think it's amazing. She beat my ass so much after this, I had to lower the difficulty. What a diva. I went into the Graces F remaster hoping it would be just as good as I remembered it being back on the PS3, and I'm very happy to report I enjoyed it every bit as much as before. Is it a perfect game? No, of course it has its flaws, but the exciting gameplay, great characters and funny dialogue made me fall in love, and it's definitely something I'll come back to in the future. Well, one, for the love of the game, and also that massive extra dungeon I haven't done. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. If you want, please leave a like, comment or subscribe, and if you have anything to say, anything at all, please let me know below. Also follow me on Twitter, Blue Sky or Twitch if you want. Next time it will actually be Destiny 2, probably. Although that will take some time, well, more than usual since that doesn't actually have an English translation patch, but we'll work on that. Or it could be Tale to the Abyss, the anniversary's coming up, who knows. Unless they announce something, in which case I'll wait until that comes out. Anyway, well, until then, thank you for watching, and good night.